Tennessee captured quite the convincing win in its rematch against the Texas Longhorns in the quarterfinals of the SEC tournament. And it's really impressive when you consider what Texas has looked like in its last handful of games and when you look to that first matchup a few weeks ago against these two teams. But whatever Texas thought they had, not enough for what Tennessee had in store for the Longhorns today. I'm Paige Dower. This is the Field Pass on Full Disclosure. When we look on the offense, of course, it really jumps out to what Chaz Lanier and Zakai Zeigler were able to do, but I actually think it's a couple of defensive plays that really sealed the win for Tennessee, and we'll get to that in just a second because we have to start with what Chaz Lanier provided this team in the opening minutes of the game. He had 9 points in the first 5 minutes of play, and he just looked so smooth. He looked so comfortable on offense. I asked Zakai Zeigler, I'm like, what was it like to see Chaz connecting on so many of his looks to start the game? He's like, oh my God, it was crazy. When he gets going, no one can stop him, and that's how it looked through the first 20 minutes of this game. He had 23 points on the day, and he was quite efficient from the field, and that's where all of the confidence started, and that's where he got Tennessee's first bucket of the game, and actually it came courtesy of a turnover. Igor Milicic got a block and a takeaway on defense, and it ended with Chaz Lanier getting a really nice paint touch type of bucket. Later, he had a mid-range jumper. 2 of his first 3 buckets came courtesy of turnovers by Tennessee's defense. So after he got a couple of touches in the field or from the field, it was time to take it from the perimeter. And that's exactly what he did with his 4th look on offense. And he sank that try. He was getting shots all over the court, and he was pulling Texas defense to him. It was not an easy look wherever he found it. There was one bucket he had early in the first half, and it came after Jahmai Mashack was actually able to deflect the Texas pass near midcourt. So Tennessee took over on their side of the court, and it was Chaz Lanier with a really easy look that he got there. Later in the half, he had, I believe it might have been Trey Johnson even, had a hand in his face, or I actually believe it was Weaver who had a hand in his face for that contested 3. And it was just really impressive to see how confident and how smooth Chaz Lanier looked to start the game. But then it's kind of how it's been going all season long, when it's actually Zakai Zeigler who takes over in the second half. And before we get to the second half, I want to mention a fun little stat. So anytime Tennessee has had Chaz Lanier score 18 or more points, Tennessee is 18-0. And this is the 13th time this season Chaz Lanier has scored 20 or more points in a game. And to do it in front of his home crowd here in Nashville is something that he gives all praise to God for, and something he didn't even think would be possible. Then you have Zakai Zeigler, who now has the single season steals record. He now has the single season assists record after his performance today with those 6 assists to now bring him up to lead in 2 categories. And I just think that highlights that he really is the SEC Defensive Player of the Year because of what he does and how effortless it can feel at times.
It's important to make the right decisions, like when to go for it on 4th down, or when to kick the field goal or go for the touchdown. It's also important to make the right insurance decisions too. That's why my office, Trey McAdams State Farm, is here to help you select the right protection at the right price. Our office will make sure you understand your State Farm coverages so you'll know what to expect when the unexpected happens. With Trey McAdams State Farm, it's easy to make the right call. When you want the real deal, like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. Proud sponsor of the Tennessee Vols.
And then to my second point, I'm sure if you were watching the game, especially in those opening minutes, Jahmai Mashack had almost like an unreal level of energy to him. Each time that he disrupted on defense, he was flexing, he was screaming, and there was just this different level of energy that he had. So I asked him about that after the game, and he says, honestly, it's because he feels pretty snubbed with not getting enough national attention for his campaign to be the Defensive Player of the Year because of what he provides. And, Zakai laughs with me and says that he battles with Jahmai every day in practice, and they really do push each other to be at their best. But Jahmai had his hand on so many of these plays for Tennessee in their rematch against Texas. We mentioned a few minutes ago about the deflection he had near midcourt. There were a number of times that he was getting really crucial defensive rebounds that kept a possession alive for Tennessee or stifled Texas when they were out there on offense. When we look at what they were able to do on offense, they had 13 points off of turnovers, 11 forced turnovers. 17 defensive rebounds. And I think that's where they had their greatest impact was, a couple of times they'd get a really nice block, but then Texas is getting a second chance type put back in that moment. But it really tightened up in the second half. And it looked really incredibly impressive what Tennessee's defense was able to do there and just how often Jahmai was involved in these plays. Okay, now to that one defensive play that I teased you in the very beginning that I thought was absolutely a game-changing type of play for Tennessee, and it was in the first half. Texas was trying to inbounds the pass. They're getting close to that 5-second violation, so they kind of rushed the pass to not have that violation, and unfortunately for them, Jordan Gainey was crashing baseline, intercepts that pass, and as he is flying out of bounds, somehow is able to kick it back in so Zakai Zeigler can get the catch, and as he's navigating through traffic, it ends up getting back to Jordan Gainey to take the three, and who's there to keep that possession alive? It's Jahmai Mashack getting the offensive rebound and then kicking it out to Igor Milicic from the top of the key to get the assist, and Igor sinks the triple try. Absolutely game-changing types of plays, and it's that moment, that sequence there that highlighted how well Tennessee was in sync with each other, how relentless they were in all facets of the game. And that gets to my final point, the communication that they had, the relentlessness, the focus, the resiliency that they had in this game. As much as people talk about maybe the conference tournament not meaning as much when it's certain types of rematches, it kind of throws those out the window because you don't want to be losing to those types of teams. And this was absolutely a rematch game for Tennessee. Look at what they did to Trey Johnson. That poor guy, I know he's the SEC Freshman of the Year, but when you go from 26 points in that first matchup to 11 in the second matchup, you know it's because what Tennessee was able to do. And it's not that Trey Johnson was out there with the high assists. He had single-digit assists, single-digit rebounds. They shut him down. No one had more than, I think, 15 points was their team high. So it wasn't that they were able to find somebody else to carry the load. They absolutely stifled them. And what I like about the resiliency is I know Igor Milicic was posterized a couple of times. Both times, Tennessee was able to have a near immediate or an immediate response on offense. They didn't let those big, emphatic plays get them down at all. In fact, they just answered right back, silenced the crowd, or in fact got the crowd reamped because there were a lot of orange shirts here at Bridgestone Arena in Nashville. And it's that type of attention to detail, that type of tenacity and endurance that they had throughout the game that I think will really make the next match against Auburn really very exciting. I know they really have a lot of revenge on their mind for that game, and when you look at these games, so often they're one possession type of games. If they play like this against Auburn, I think they have a good chance of making it back to the championship game. That will certainly be a very exciting game. I'll have more from my locker room conversations with the players coming up later tonight, but these are my quick 3 reactions following Tennessee's convincing win over Texas. I'll be back in a couple of hours. We'll go back to the homepage for those locker room interviews. In the meantime, I'll talk to you guys later.